Welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast. My name is Anthony Oliver, and today we are focusing on the UK's new nuclear power ambitions and specifically exploring Sizewell C. As I said a few weeks ago on the podcast, it's one of the most significant moments for the UK's nuclear industry, perhaps over a generation. Last month, the government announced their £14.2 billion investment to accelerate the construction of the Sizewell C project. Alongside this comes backing for small modular reactors and investment in fusion research, all part of a landmark commitment to clean energy, jobs and long-term energy security. So the message is clear. This is the start of what the government calls a golden age of nuclear. Well, Sizewell C certainly sits at the heart of this new ambition. A twin-reactor power station on the Suffolk coast, a carbon copy of the Hinkley Point C reactor now under construction in Somerset, sitting alongside the Sizewell B station, which of course was intended as the start of the last nuclear golden age 30 years ago. When operational in the mid-2030s, Sizewell C will power 6 million homes with low carbon energy for the next 60 plus years as the UK's first fully British-owned nuclear project in decades. But turning that vision into reality will mean overcoming a long list of challenges, from regulatory hurdles and construction risks to workforce capacity and public trust. So, joining me today to unpack all of this is Julia Pyke, Managing Director of the Sizewell C project. Lots to talk about when it comes to identifying what the government's investment really means in practice and how Sizewell C fits into the wider nuclear revival. And of course, what it will take to deliver this project on time and to budget. So let's crack on. Julia, welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast.
Thank you very much.
Well, Julia, as I said, the government's £14.2 billion commitment is a huge moment for Sizewell C. On the back of that, you've also this week announced your Civil Works Alliance partners as Laing O'Rourke, Balfour Beatty and Bouygues Travaux Public to build on their Hinkley Point C work. So practically, what does this injection of public money change for you?
Well, it's a huge expression of confidence. So when you're developing these long-term projects, you're always encouraging people in the first instance to believe that the project's a great idea, and then you're encouraging more and more people in. But it's important that you get certainty so that you can really get people to move into the project team who have options in other projects elsewhere, and so that your supply chain have confidence to invest, so that our work with kids at school now has a sort of very obvious and certain career path. And so what the investment really meant for us was that certainty.
That brings that reality of the project. It gives people to think this is actually going to happen.
Yeah, that's right. And it sort of marks the end of an era of talking and well, we have already started doing, but it will really help us increase the momentum on the doing.
So lots going on right now. I mean, what's the current status of Sizewell C in terms of construction and regulatory approvals? What's actually happening out there in Suffolk right now, Julia?
What's actually happening is that because it's a copy, we have the design. So the design of Hinkley is 85% something complete, and that is a huge gift to Sizewell C. If you went to the site today, you would see that there are about 1,400 people on the site. There is a lot of earthworks going on. We've started building some structures. You would see offices with hundreds of people in them. If you went a little further away from the site, you would see the start of link roads and park and ride facilities. And then if you went all the way to Ipswich, you would see that we have a very large warehousing space at Orwell Logistics Park where we're going to store a lot of the equipment. So because we have the design, we're going to have the equipment manufactured sort of just after the Hinkley Unit 2 equipment. So when the factories are at the peak of their quality journey.
Right, yeah.
And then we're going to store the equipment for a long time.
Because, of course, this project will learn from the EPR reactor project at Hinkley Point C. The project that, I mean, let's be honest, Julia, it's not been without its problems. You know, cost overruns, delivery delays. I think 18 billion, I seem to remember, being the original price. It's a lot more than that now. But we've also seen similar tales of woe with EPR designs in Finland, Flamanville in France and China, all late, all over budget, all underperforming. I mean, some might say that the definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Clearly, Julie, you're not mad. So what's different about Sizewell C? I mean, how are you applying the lessons learned, both technically and organisationally?
All of the EPR projects around the world, so in France, Finland and China, and of course Hinkley in the UK, they are all first of a kind in their own country. So most pressurised water reactors, all pressurised water reactors are basically very similar. And what's different is the safety systems that you build around them. And each country has quite highly nationalised nuclear regulation and indeed environmental regulation. So the detail of what's done around the heart of the reactor metalwork is different in these different reactors in these countries. So they're all EPRs, but they have quite significant national differences. So we feel very much the burden of needing to demonstrate that when you build for the second time in a country, those improvements that we see between Hinkley Unit 1 and Hinkley Unit 2 are brought into Sizewell Unit 1 and Unit 2, and that we see a fleet effect as though they are Units 3 and 4 of Hinkley. So that's what we believe will happen. That's what we're already seeing in terms of how much quicker things are, how many fewer quality defects there are in the manufacture of equipment. And although everything's always made to sound very technical, really it's very human. Humans learn by doing.
Right, yeah.
So in Hinkley, the team are rebuilding UK nuclear ability from really the first time in decades. So Sizewell B was the last station built, turned on in 1995. So that means most people involved have not built a nuclear power station in Britain. And it means that when we start building, an awful lot of people who've worked on Hinkley have built a nuclear power station in Britain. And so they come to us with all of that experience.
So that process that you're going through means that by the time you get to Sizewell C, a lot of that supply chain and that knowledge will be there, ready for you to take advantage of it.
Yeah, that's right. All those lessons around the quality to which you have to build when you're building nuclear, they're all lessons which the UK has had to relearn.
Yeah. Well, we'll come to skills a bit later on. But with this new momentum, though, what right now are the key milestones over the next 12 to 24 months? I mentioned that you're trying to get open in the mid-2030s. That's presumably still the target. But, how confident are you of meeting the timescales in the really kind of the near future rather than the distant future?
We're confident of meeting the timescales in the near future. We have internal goals like 25 in 25. We're on track to meet those goals. When you build a nuclear power station in Britain, it tends to be on the coast, it tends to be somewhere which is more remote. And that means that we have to build quite a lot of infrastructure in order to build the power station. So we have to build roads, we have to extend a railway, we have to build a beach landing facility, we're actually building a further education college. So there's a lot of that going on. And of course, we're also doing a lot of work to create environmental mitigation land. We've done a huge amount of work for a long time to make sure that when we talk about biodiversity net gain, that's quite a dry term. What really motivates people to believe that we will leave the land in a better state than we find it is seeing us do it and seeing the quality to which we are doing that work.
Yeah. You've got 14.2 billion committed from the public sector, but private investment, I presume, is still required for the project. Who's set to come on board, and how does this latest public funding help de-risk the project in terms of bringing that private sector investment on board?
Well, the government is in the last stages of the capital raise. It's a process being run by the government. I mean, I'm sure that you've read the newspapers, but I can't comment any further on what's a confidential topic. Okay. And we're expecting that process to conclude very soon. And again, that will be a huge thing that the UK is doing, which is showing the way in how you get big private capital into nuclear and how you make nuclear genuinely financeable. Because what's really stood in the way of the nuclear industry isn't that people don't know how to build nuclear power stations. They do. It's actually been finance. So I'm really excited by the idea that here in the UK, we will show how it is you can bring private finance in, just as nuclear takes off again around Europe and in fact across the world.
I imagine that the policy certainty aids that.
It really helps that. It really helps that. And of course, it really helps our own team. We have 1,400 people on the site. We've got hundreds of people in offices here in London, in Ipswich, in Gloucester. We're opening offices in Manchester. All the people who are coming into the project and all of the young people we're persuading to do courses to qualify to come into the project. Everybody needs to know that they're working in something which is happening.
Yeah. So final investment decision, 2025 is the milestone. Is that going to happen?
I'm very confident that the final investment decision is going to be made in 2025, yeah.
Okay. Because as I mentioned, the Chancellor and the Energy Secretary, they described this as the start of the golden age of nuclear. Similar language we did hear at the opening of Sizewell B, as you mentioned 30 years ago. I do remember being at New Civil Engineer magazine. I started there at the week that we published the celebratory special issue for the launch and the opening of it. But in your view, what would it take to live up to that ambition? Because it's quite a thing. There's quite a statement being made about this new golden age. How do you make sure that that is lived up to?
Well, our responsibility is to make a success of Sizewell C, and making a success is, of course, bringing in a power station on time and on budget. But it's also wider things around making sure that people want to come into the nuclear industry, that it's seen as aspirational, that the industry is a better representation of society. So it's traditionally been very white, very male. Here at Sizewell C, we actually have a 65% female executive team. We've currently got around about 42% women in the Sizewell C workforce. That's something that we need to maintain. We need to work hard to maintain it. And we need to make sure that we improve the ethnic diversity of the workforce so that, broadly speaking, we look like society, because electricity generation is all paid for by society as a whole. In terms of nuclear beyond Sizewell C, nuclear needs a programme. So we need to see a nuclear strategy from the government, and we need to understand, the industry needs to understand what's next. Is there going to be another gigawatt plant? How many SMRs are going to be built? So, very much welcome the SMR programme. And then personally, I'm very interested in the small advanced modular reactors. I think that they can bring something really transformational to maintaining the industrialised economy while also achieving reduction of fossil fuels. So there's a very exciting prospect ahead, and what we need is some more decisions. So really grateful for the decision that's been made for Sizewell C, and to maintain the golden era, we need to capitalise on that decision and make some more.
Well, I'm going to drill into some of those decisions around SMRs, etc. But we haven't mentioned GB Energy yet, because GB Energy, the government's publicly owned energy company, and GB Energy Nuclear, which is driving the nuclear sector forward. How does that help then?
Well, it's a great demonstration by the government of the integration of nuclear into wider energy policy. So making sure that GB Nuclear, GBN and GB Energy are very well joined up is a very good thing. I think there's quite a lot of joining up needs to be done generally across electricity generation and transmission thinking, so that people are looking at system design as a whole based on what sort of system do we want. There's been quite a lot over the years of looking at component parts and talking about prices of component parts as though that's really relevant, when it's not really relevant. What's really relevant is, do you have abundant electricity available when you want it? Can you support an industrialised economy? And is the price of the electricity going to support an industrialised economy and make our industry competitive? And is it going to provide electricity to people at a price which is equivalent with other lower-priced European electricity markets? So that's what people really want, and that's what the system should be doing. So I think there is a lot more joined-up thinking starting to happen, and that's very welcome.
And I suppose what it also does is it builds a new industry, and what the government has really put a spotlight on the British supply chains. I think your alliance is looking to employ 3,000 to 4,000 workers over the 8-year programme to build this nuclear plant. James Stewart, on the podcast last week, when we were talking about HS2, he highlighted that the UK supply chain isn't really fit for purpose when it comes to major project delivery. It's simply they're just too big for the supply chain we've got there at our disposal. How can you help change this so that the UK industry is ready to scale up and deliver for you at Sizewell C?
Well, the first way in which we're hoping to change things is that we have a lot of UK content. So we're committed to 90% through life. It might be even higher, and at least 70% during the construction phase. It's really important that UK supply chain can see the jobs. They can see programme. They can see that it's worth investing in skills training, in hiring people, etc., because they can see what the jobs are. The second decision we made is that the value to us of the experience of the big suppliers, the tier one suppliers on Hinkley, far exceeded any potential benefit of competing those contracts, because you'd only ever really be competing the margin And that's a drop in the ocean of the cost of building something like Sizewell C.
Because they're able to bring their existing workforces with the skills and the knowledge across from one to the other. Yeah.
And literally the building methodologies. Literally this group of people, broadly similar group of people, have done this before. So of course they're going to make sure that we employ at least a third of people from the local area. But in terms of the systems, the supervisory systems, the method statements, etc., those are all being brought across together with the deep experience of having done the civils on Hinkley. So that's the first way in which we really hope to help. The next thing is that we haven't tried to give the job to any one contractor. We've deliberately established an alliance so that people can play to their strengths, but also so that there's strength in depth. And then, of course, beneath the tier ones, we'll have a lot of tier twos. And the idea is that nobody has more than they can cope with, but everybody has a clear programme of work ahead so that they can invest.
Yeah, and engage in the local communities, the local supply chains, rather than just people parachuting in for a particular job. I mean, that's key because you need to build a local economy there.
That is absolutely essential. And that's one of the big advantages we have as a mega project, being based in a place, Leiston, on the East Suffolk coast. So we are committed legally to take at least 1/3 of the workforce from the local area. And we'd like to do much better than that. We really want to make sure that Sizewell C operates to transform the economy of East Suffolk, which has areas of great wealth and it has areas which are not very prosperous. And we're very keen that we create jobs at all levels, sort of entry-level jobs and jobs in engineering.
Right, yeah.
And one of the things I'm really happy about is that Atkins Realis, one of our big global engineering company who are one of our suppliers, they are going to open offices in Suffolk. And that's a huge opportunity for people in Suffolk to have these long-term, high-status careers and stay in Suffolk.
Yeah, I mean, certainly getting those skills into the sector is a key priority. But it's a sector, of course, that has, arguably has been in something in the doldrums over the last 20 years. Perhaps not maybe in the last 10 years so much, but certainly building those skills up is a key factor. I imagine organisations like the Construction Skills Mission Board that the government's running is going to be driving that as well. Yeah,
I agree. And I think one of the aspects of why is the construction industry not as been as successful as we would like, it is really for people to think about what is our collective attitude to the construction industry and how are we going to encourage people to go into construction. So one of the things that I think about a lot is that people who engage in construction on these mega projects, they're doing something quite heroic, really. They're agreeing to live away from home unless they live in Suffolk, which is great. Then they're agreeing to live away from home for weeks at a time, away from their families, and do something which is for the benefit of the nation. And I think that there needs to be much more respect paid to that sacrifice and that choice, and also the sort of really, really high level of skill involved in the industry. So we are really keen to work with young people. We run a school council with the local school in Leiston. We're going to expand it to a wider group of schools and to show people that this is a really exciting thing to do. And also, it's a really, really good thing to do for society. A heroic effort indeed. Let's talk a bit more about the rest of the government announcement around SMRs and fusion, because you mentioned that bringing those into your project is important. I mean, how important is it that Sizewell C isn't just a one-off project, but part of this sustained national programme that includes SMRs and fusion? Well, it's really important. People's attitude to their job, even things like productivity, are all impacted by whether or not people feel that they're doing something great, which is part of big national endeavour, or whether or not they feel that they're doing something which is disrespected. You're going to have a more expensive, less successful project if you get into the territory of the latter. So it's really important that the nuclear industry is seen as the good thing it is, that it's seen as being a programme that people at university today, at school today, really want to come into it, that we're able to attract really, really high-skilled people to come into something which is so important to the nation's future. And do you see the technologies working together, co-locating, for instance, SMRs on the Sizewell site? The Sizewell site itself is too small to allow co-location, but in terms of working together, yes, very much so. It's one industry and we're one nation and we all need electricity. We absolutely need to work together to make sure that costs to consumers are minimised, and that's not just between us and the rest of the nuclear industry. It's between everybody who's building electricity generation and transmission projects, and it's also bringing together other essential things that consumers pay for, like water.
Right,
I think much more joined up thinking about the relationship between electricity and water would be really helpful, particularly where the south of England is running short of water, and probably there's going to be more electricity involved in the production of sufficient drinking water and water for agriculture.
Yeah, no, well, that's an interesting point. And I suppose you also got to bear in mind that just building a power station is only half the problem. You've got to get that power out to the nation and put it into a grid which is robust enough to be able to take it.
You absolutely do. We need systems thinking, which is taking account of
back to that
all
again.
the technologies.
Back to that again, Julia. I don't know. Well, going back to the experiences at Hinkley Point et al. I mean, how do you respond to critics who argue that the large-scale nuclear projects such as Sizewell C, such as Hinkley Point C, they're too slow and too expensive to deliver in time for our net zero ambitions, and we really need to get behind SMRs, those smaller, nimble, agile projects that can really deliver now.
There tends to be a Venn diagram in which the same people who say it's too slow are also the people who would rather it never happened at all. So it can be difficult to dissociate those views. I mean, I started doing the paperwork for Hinkley in 2006, and it started being built in 2016. So I mean, there's definitely an issue around how long does it take to get through the permitting phase for any project. And that is absolutely not to criticise any regulator. It's a whole combination of things. And the government is focused on speeding up that process, as indeed are the regulators themselves. And then once it starts to be built, then it will take 10 to 12 years. And that's because it's producing a huge amount of electricity in one place. I think SMRs have a great future, but I think if you stopped doing nuclear now and you didn't do Sizewell C, the SMRs have still got to get through all of that design approval, all of that permitting for their respective sites, which, as I said, I started working on for Hinkley in 2006 and I came across to work on Sizewell in 2017. Mm-hmm. So these things are just not that quick. And that's partly because we live in a democracy, and it's partly because we're a very regulated society. And in lots of ways, this is what we want. We want to live in a democracy, and we want to live somewhere where people do have rights to object to projects. We've got to get a better balance so things speed up. But I don't think any of us are aspiring to live somewhere where the government can simply, with no democratic mandate at all, insist on building something outside regulation next to you.
Okay, no. Well, you mentioned that you've been at the project for 8 years. Your background is in law, having spent 15 years with Herbert Smith Freehills. What took you originally into the world of nuclear then?
One of my first jobs as a junior lawyer was to literally be the bag carrier on the British Energy privatisation. And then I happened to do a fair amount of nuclear law through my career, ending up in working on the setup of the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority and then on Hinkley. And then at the same time I was doing Hinkley, I also did the law for some biomass for a tidal lagoon project, which didn't happen, for various wind projects. And I thought at the end of all of that the biggest personal contribution I could make to having an industrialised economy which has opportunities for everybody's kids and maintains standards of living, ways of life, but also doesn't burn fossil fuels, was actually to come and help get another nuclear power station built.
Right. I mean, it's interesting that the person in charge of this project is from a law background rather than an engineering background. Do you think that background in law prepares you better for this role, i.e. making sure that this, as James Stewart might say, the project doesn't start wrong?
Well, I'm the joint managing director together with Nigel Cann, and Nigel was previously a nuclear operator and then the delivery director for Hinkley Point C. So actually between us, we have a pretty comprehensive skill set. I think that understanding project structuring, the introduction of finance, how the disciplines of finance will help deliver the project better through introducing, in some areas, better organisation. I think those are really important, and I think actually a lot of the success of Sizewell is in the combination of the skill sets.
Yeah, I mean, nuclear is a highly male-dominated industry, as you said earlier, but here you are, joint managing director. You've also got, as you mentioned, also a large number of female directors on the board. What are the challenges specifically that female leaders have to overcome in this sector, and what are you doing to achieve that?
I think it's primarily about, if you can see it, you can beat it, and also humans simply do have a bit of a tendency to promote in their own image. So once you have a sort of critical mass of women, it will tend to be self-perpetuating. You will tend to then have more women coming through. And when I was at Herbert Smith, we always had more women in the projects team where I was a partner than we did elsewhere in the firm. I think there is something about having a critical mass so that the women can see that you can, at different stages of your career, should you so choose, go down and work less than full time if you've got little kids or caring responsibilities. Mm-hmm. I think seeing, rather than just listening to people talking about it, that it can be done like this, and that the people in charge genuinely are not going to think worse of you because you want to have a slightly different working pattern because you've got little kids, and appreciating that people's careers can go in cycles. People can want to step back for a bit, but that doesn't mean that they want to step back forever. They may very well want to come back and be in charge. Yeah. And I think that because traditionally women have played the major role in childcare and other caring responsibilities, I think maybe senior women who've been through that do have a sort of not only a more sympathetic attitude to it, but also people can see that you have the lived experience of.
Is that something you've been through yourself?
Yeah, I worked 3 days in the office, 1 at home for years when I was a partner in the law firm. Mm-hmm. Okay. While I brought up the kids. Okay.
And how do you escape the pressures of Sizewell C nowadays? I mean, what do you do when you're not at work? You clearly got a family, hobbies. What do you get up to?
I'm pretty boring. I have dogs. I'm sort of like some sort of stereotypical English woman. I really like my garden. I really like my dogs. I quite like going to church.
Right. And where is your garden? What sort of dogs have you got?
I live in North Hertfordshire. I have Irish setters. Right. And I have a very large garden, which is a struggle to maintain.
We're going to need a large garden for those Irish setters, I imagine. They run around quite a lot. What keeps you awake at night when you're thinking about your work then?
What keeps me awake at night is the idea that we do have to make a success of this, that the eyes of many people are rightly upon us, that it's a huge thing to be entrusted with this much money, which is being derived from consumers and taxpayers. And we have a responsibility to deliver for consumers and also for the future of the nuclear industry.
Yeah. I mean, you say you live in North Hertfordshire. Some might say, well, gee, that's a long way away from Sizewell C. Would you live nearby?
Yeah, of course I would. I mean, lots of people live near Sizewell, and Sizewell's had nuclear power stations since the early 60s, with Sizewell A and then Sizewell B. I have no qualms at all about living near a nuclear power station, as you'd imagine, and I may very well choose to move that way.
Okay, well, it's a very nice part of the world. Let's a bit more about the project. I spoke to James Stewart, as I said, about lessons learned from the HS2 project experience. He reckoned that your relationship here on this project with EDF gives you some protection, a buffer, he describes it, from political interference and scope creep. I mean, is that correct? You know, and how are you ensuring that this project, as James might say, does not start wrong?
I think that the introduction of private capital has been a really good thing because we've been through an awful lot of scrutiny, which while scrutiny can be painful, it can also be very useful. So as well as the government assurance teams looking at us, we've had people doing vendor due diligence for the incoming investors and the incoming lenders. I think that the disciplines of finance are very good for the project because it sort of requires us to put ourselves in order to demonstrate that we are, in fact, in order. And I think that the presence of the private capital will act as a buffer so that the project goes along with the government acting as shareholder with the same set of obligations as the other shareholders.
Right. And are you trying to resist the temptation to be innovative? And I'm doing quote signs here, be innovative, because quite often the temptation to be innovative can lead to scope creep and delays and over cost overruns, example. Are you looking at modular construction, for instance? And how do you make sure that that does improve delivery and reduce cost risk rather than the other way around?
It's a really important point. It is a copy of Hinkley Point C, so it's a physical copy. But we are, of course, looking at innovative ways of doing the copy differently, where we can identify efficiencies. Hinkley itself has introduced a lot of modularisation over the course of the build, and we're hoping to pick up where they've left off and increase the rate of modularisation. We are looking at things like different shift patterns. I mean, productivity is partly about technology, it's partly about people. We're looking at ways of trying to ensure we have the most motivated, the happiest workforce that we can have best-in-class welfare facilities, help people really feel that everybody is a respected and equal part of the mission. You know, the old NASA statement about the cleaner. I really believe that we need to implement that sort of respect throughout the organisation.
And that keeps them there now, but also over the next 60 years while you're running the plant as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. There's a clear government support now. But I mean, how secure do you feel that this cross-party political consensus is over the long term when it comes to projects like nuclear, which, they're expensive, they take a long while, there aren't that many ribbons to cut?
The Labour Party and the Conservative Party have been solidly supportive of nuclear, and I refer to how long I've been doing this. So we've been through various cycles of different colours of government, including the coalition. And at all times, we've had solid cross-party support. I think when people start looking at the facts about nuclear, they always end up supporting them. We actually have a Green Council in East Suffolk District Council, and we work very well with the council.
Yeah.
And I think that we are very committed to making a very positive difference in the area where we are building. And I think that people recognise that even if nuclear wouldn't be their first choice of technology, the fact that it's on a small footprint, so a huge amount of electricity on a small footprint, and the level of care we take to engage with the local community and give opportunities to people, and particularly to young people, I think ends up being appreciated by the majority.
Well, you've got planning reforms promised. They're on the way through the Planning and Infrastructure Bill. What more is needed to speed up the process and reduce that risk, that crucial risk for developers like yourself?
I think for us, it's not really changed in law, because obviously we've been through planning. For us, it's about more of an attitude of everybody getting behind the idea that this is important, this is the national priority, and that everybody's focused on making it happen within the law, fully observing all of the obligations we have to the different regulatory agencies, but it's all done with an attitude of this is an important project, let's make it happen, and let's make it happen well.
So biggest barriers for you right now in terms of accelerating nuclear delivery at Sizewell, but also in the UK more generally?
Rather than a barrier, it's the task of sort of building the infrastructure to build the project. So it's we are in the phase, as I said, of building the road, building the railway, building the beach landing facility. So all of that. And then I think there are opportunities for us in terms of joining up with other projects. So joining up with other energy projects in Suffolk, joining up with water projects. There's an awful lot of infrastructure planned in the east of England, and at cost to consumers and the cost of living is going to go down for people the more we are able to join up. So we are using the same accommodation, the same park and rides, the same link roads. We are basically taking every opportunity we can to cooperate with other people building infrastructure in the area for collective benefit. So
digging just one hole and putting more stuff into those holes. What does success look like then for you, Julia, at Sizewell C in 2035, perhaps when it's open, both in terms of an energy system, but also a local economy generator? How will we know whether this is truly the turning point?
Success looks like Sizewell C comes in on time and budget, and that Sizewell C has managed to engage well with the local community so that we have a large local workforce, and that the local community have jobs at all levels, and it's very clear to them that all careers are open. We quite often get accused of only really offering the lower paid jobs to the local community. It's not really true, but I'm absolutely determined that won't be true, and that we will be genuinely making opportunities available to people at all levels.
That's through your investment in the college, etc.
Yeah, that's right. Investment in the schools, investment in the colleges, and our supply chain coming and moving into Suffolk and offering the sorts of roles that are available to people in London.
Yeah, I noticed we haven't actually put a specific number on what your budget is for this. Is that it for a reason?
I think the government said when the 14.2 billion was announced, said that we would disclose a cost estimate at the final investment decision date. So hopefully that's very soon.
Okay, circa 40 to 60 billion then.
I'm not going to comment on the cost estimate.
Okay, well, when the project's complete, what do you hope it will represent then in terms of legacy for clean energy, for engineering, and for Britain's global industrial reputation?
I hope it will demonstrate that Britain can build mega projects. I hope it will demonstrate that the nuclear industry can succeed. There should be more nuclear. It will be a better thing for society. And I hope that the nuclear industry looks more like society in terms of gender and ethnic balance.
Well, Julia, huge, exciting times ahead, and certainly I can see that from your whole persona here that you are very, very up for this particular challenge. And big challenges are ahead, big opportunities, of course, also. But thanks so much for joining me today, taking us through what those are as we look forward to the Sizewell C project.
Thank you.
Well, look, thanks very much, Judith. Sadly, that's all we've got time for on the podcast now, but there are more podcasts in the pipeline as we continue to probe the big issues facing the sector. If you haven't done so already, do check out the Infrastructure Podcast website, www.infrastructure-podcast.com, where you'll find the background information and all the latest podcasts to listen to and to share with your colleagues. So thanks for joining us, and thanks again to Julia, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.